Have you ever noticed how everything in nature takes the path of least resistance? Winds avoiding dense areas and concentrating down open valleys. Lightning taking the shortest path to the ground and following the most conductive surfaces. Water and air moving from higher pressure to lower pressure. And even us humans, despite our intelligence and unique capability of metacognition, we too are geared to follow our paths of least resistance. Our habits. Just like everything else that exists, we are creatures of habit. Our lives are guided, often defined by our daily routines. Many of us stick to the same morning routines, whether it be reaching for our phones as soon as we wake up, brushing our teeth in the same exact order, or grabbing the same type of coffee every day. We often default to cooking the same few meals, or taking the most familiar routes to work without much thought, even if they aren't necessarily the best options. On a larger scale, our habits dictate the trajectory of our lives. A struggling student might habitually procrastinate, often leading to last-minute cramming that reinforces a cycle of stress, while a dedicated athlete might train daily, strengthening their skills and mindset over time. These habits, whether intentional or not, create the framework for everything else in our lives. The realization that we are controlled by our habits might make us feel like passengers in our lives. This might hit close to home, especially for those of us who have tried the monumental effort of breaking their worst habits. Quitting smokers may often find themselves lighting up a cigarette almost on autopilot during stressful moments. Those trying to overcome procrastination might find themselves spending hours mindlessly scrolling on their phone, while painfully aware of the valuable time they are wasting, yet feeling powerless to stop. Those trying to live a healthier lifestyle may find themselves at a fast food drive-through, rather than the gym after a long day at work. After such discouraging experiences, a logical conclusion might be that if nature is beholden to follow its paths of least resistance, then who am I to sway from mine? This, however, would be a false conclusion. Although it is true that nature cannot go against its paths of least resistance, this does not mean that it is limited by it. To the contrary, nature utilizes its paths of least resistance as a tool to create order. A clear example of this can be seen in our own biology. Our bodies are the manifestation of many different physical and chemical processes working in conjunction with each other. These processes, like everything else, follow their natural paths of least resistance, but they are set up in a way that works perfectly to create life. For instance, consider the act of breathing. It requires that air moves both in and out of our lungs. However, air's path of least resistance dictates that it can only move in one direction, from high pressure to low pressure. There is nothing our bodies can do to change this fact. To get around this problem, our body opts to change itself and use air's path of least resistance for its benefit. When we inhale, our diaphragm contracts and moves downward, increasing the volume of our chest cavity. This creates a low-pressure area in our lungs, causing air from the higher pressure environment outside to rush in. When we exhale, the diaphragm relaxes, the chest cavity shrinks, and the pressure inside our lungs increases, pushing air back out into the environment. The desired results are created not by going against air's path of least resistance, but rather by utilizing it. Following nature's example, we too can create the change we want in our lives by stopping the uphill battle against our paths of least resistance, and instead, focusing on utilizing them to fit our needs. This can be done by focusing your efforts entirely on building good habits and just leaving the bad habits to themselves. There are two major advantages to this approach. The first advantage is that it is a lot easier to build habits than to break them. It is incredibly difficult to quit deep-rooted bad habits because you are going against your established paths of least resistance, which is why many fail in this pursuit. The way the neural links in our brain work, it is actually a lot easier to learn new information than to forget something that has already been learned and long established. As a result, we have a lot more control over what we do than what we don't do. It's much easier to get yourself to exercise for 30 minutes rather than try to resist the urge to smoke all day, or adding healthier foods into your diet over quitting your favorite snacks, or establishing a nightly reading habit rather than trying to fight the urge to scroll on your phone before bed. The second advantage is that new habits take up space and fill the void that is bound to be left when you stop the bad habit. Although not readily apparent, there are good reasons for why we have bad habits, and they often serve very important roles in our lives. Most commonly, bad habits, like smoking, binge eating, and even procrastination, are used as effective ways of coping with stress, which is necessary for us to get through our daily struggles. When you attempt to quit these habits without a replacement, you are depriving yourself of the necessary benefits they were providing. The next time you are faced with a stressor, you automatically go back to the bad habits as you have no other way of coping. On the other hand, when you already have a positive habit that is well established and fulfills the same need, then you are not affected as much by the absence of the old bad habits. This enables long-lasting change and makes the whole process more pleasant. Good habits also take up space and time in your life, naturally leaving less time for the bad. Working out leaves less time to smoke, eating fruit leaves less space for chips, and reading before bed leaves less energy for scrolling on your phone. There's actually a hidden crucial third benefit, which may not be apparent at first. Good habits improve you and push growth, which makes it easier to do further positive change. Just like how it's easy to get stuck in old unhealthy habits, you can also utilize the positive momentum of building good habits and reach a point where your path of least resistance is growth and improvement. As a result, you end up needing a lot less willpower to make further positive changes in your life. It actually becomes more difficult to go back to your old ways because your path of least resistance now serves you.